Greetings sailors, and welcome to a recent replay of mine featuring one of my newest ships, the Z-23, the Tier 8 German destroyer. It's not the only recent purchase I've made. I went from 30 plus million credits on EU to I think about 2 million at one point. I literally couldn't afford to outfit the ships I'd bought, but yeah, one of them was the Des Moines, and the other was this, and there was possibly something else as well. I can't remember. And then also I've spent credits on things like outfitting test ships, so it wasn't just buying new ships. So the Z-23 doesn't have the best reputation among the Tier 8 destroyers. It's not particularly anything for its tier. I think the only outstanding thing that it's got is the hydro, and even that at tier 8 is not that distinctive because the low yang exists, but it's not terrible. You know, the torps are better than the tier before, and the guns are okay. It's one of the ones that can mount the 15cm guns as well, and it's, you know, it's not super stealthy, it's not super maneuverable, doesn't have super good AA, it's just, it's not really, you know, anything. It's kind of a bit of a middle of the road ship, which is, it's fine. It's just, I've yet to meet anybody that particularly loves it. However, I have survived the Shenyang, which to my mind is among the worst of the Tier 8 destroyers. At least of the ones I've played. And if I can survive the Shenyang, then I can almost certainly survive this. This is an excellent start, by the way. This will get better, this replay, but it definitely has kind of a derpy start. In that, well, you know, objective achieved. I've chased that Akizuki out of the cat, but I've done so in a not particularly elegant fashion and lost a whole bunch of health in the process. So yeah, not my finest bit of destroyer play, but anyway, it kinda worked. Kinda. This is a tier 10 game, by the way, so it's not the best matchmaking. In fact, it's not entirely uncommon matchmaking, but there's not that much radar for me to worry about, so it could certainly be worse. Sometimes you get games where it's 4 or 5 radars per team, and if you're lucky, it's the same number of radars per team, because it can still happen sometimes that you know, one team has 2 and the other team has 5 kind of thing. I have seen examples of that recently, but fortunately at least it's not common. But that wasn't the case in this game, so I don't really have a huge amount to worry about apart from the enemy destroyers, or just completely messing it up. In fact, I think the only radar, I'm just checking now, on the enemy team that was there for sure was the Atlanta, although the Edinburgh might also have had it. So this was actually quite good in terms of not having caps saturated with radar. So for my first torpedo hits, yeah, one of those completely unexpected hit, like not even, it wasn't even a blind drop. It was made against I can't even remember who I was aiming against there. I was too busy blathering, but one of the battleships, hoping they'd sail into range. Because, by the way, did I mention this is completely stock as you're seeing it. It won't be, or it wasn't after this game. This was the last game I played stock, but yeah, dropping on one of the battleships and unexpectedly took out the Akizuki, which was one of my big threats on this flank, because it's slow, okay, but it's got better concealment than I do and a heck of a better rate of fire, and I'm pretty sure they had better hit points than I did left as well, given the somewhat derpy entrance into that cap circle. So it was a real stroke of luck, but sometimes that happens, and it's always annoying when it happens to you, but it's one of those things that just doesn't occur very often, fortunately. So there was a somewhat ill-guided attempt to drop some smoke for the Fiji here, which absolutely did not work out. It was a bit of a desperate attempt, really. I didn't think it was going to work, and surprise, surprise, it didn't. But it does also give me the chance to try and set some fires, and there we go, getting some hits with this drop as well, so that's not too bad. And at this point, if I can get a fire on the Hipper, although it's not going to burn for that long, it will still burn for the full duration, so that will be quite nice. And the Hipper is the one I'm most worried about of the ships on the one line here. I don't normally play around on the one line, but this is where the ships were. They were coming towards me, and in a destroyer, that's where you want to be, really, dropping torps into the path of things that are coming your way, and especially when you don't have great concealment and stock torpedoes. Although the stock torps aren't that bad on the Z-23. I think you get an extra, is it 8.5? Or is it, I can't even remember now. It's either 8.5 to 9.5 or 8 to 9. I really can't remember. With the German destroyers, generally there is this tier-on-tier progression with the torps. It's not quite as spiky as it is with some of the other lines. Anyway, so no fires, sadly, and we are starting to lose some allies, but we're ahead on points enough that we've got a bit of a cushion here. So if I can just get some more hits into things, then that should bump up my damage a bit more, and if I'm lucky, I can maybe even peg a flooding on somebody, because I did hit that Uzumo before. And so, well, although the torps themselves aren't that powerful, that couple of hits knocks him really quite far down in terms of health, and he's now flooding out for the rest. So unless his damage control party comes back really soon, this Izumo is basically screwed. So that's good news. So that just leaves the Hipper. I've also got one ally left on this line as well. Normally seeing a battleship player bump around on the border like that's not the best thing, but this time I was glad of the backup, so I'm not going to complain too much about that Roma being here. That gave them something to actually chew on other than me. There is still one other enemy on this line, and this really was, you know, this was me taking advantage of enemy players derping, which is... You're going to have good games in destroyers when you get battleships doing that, especially. But in this case, I've strayed a little bit too close. And in my panic, I not only pop the speed boost, but I decide, no, let's do the smoke as well, because he does turn his guns on me. But despite the fact I was spotted so close, turning away, this Monarch doesn't make any major evasive maneuvers. I think it's more bad luck with my RNG from the torp dispersion, if you can put it that way, that stops me getting more hits than that, because there was a fairly big gap in between those waves. Not that it's a super narrow spread on German torps to begin with, but still it feels a little unfair that that was only 2 hits, given that they basically took no evasive action. So waiting for the reload to come back, which on German destroyer doesn't take too long, but as it turns out somebody else gets that Monarch, so that's fine. We're still comfortably ahead on points as well, but Andy, who is in the Bismarck, my div mate there, he's now pushing through, and I was cautioning him to be wary of torpedoes, but he's basically I've been giving chase to this Alsace. He's I think he was struggling a bit with his German dispersion here, and the Ibuki is going to make a drop on him as well. It's just lurking behind the island at the moment, so he's pushing out into what's not going to be a great situation, a survivable situation for him. I think the Alsace was also spamming him with HE, so it was just wearing him down and setting fires he couldn't eventually put out. So he lost the hit point race, unfortunately. The Roma's still on the 1-2 line to my left, being a little too cautious, I think, given the circumstances. Elsewhere, I mean, you'd have been able to follow the minimap, because I've not actually cut anything out of this one. I just sped up certain sections. So, yeah, there was a bit of a fight over on the other side, and it was all a bit, you know, this has been quite a close game, all things considered, but it was all a bit messy and scrappy. Anyway, so the second drop on the Ibuki, that looks really good. That's going to be 2 hits, not going to kill him, but oh, god damn it. It is simultaneously the best and worst thing when that happens. It's the best thing when it happens to you, and the torps that have you bang to rights just run out just before they get to you. But it's also the worst when you're the person that dropped those torps. So, yeah. Oh well, could have been more damage, but because my torps are back already, well, I can just put some more down across to this Ibuki, and, well, let's hope we have slightly better luck. And they are actually now coming towards the cap, so I do have some slightly better odds of hitting these ones. They're not going to run out of range. However, as I've been paying such close attention to the Ibuki, I've not realised that that Alsace is getting a little bit close, and I was initially more worried about the fact that, well, this is going to give the Ibuki shots on me, but then the Alsace, well, I mean, it's not just their main battery, it's their secondaries I've got to be worried about, but yeah, they turn their main guns on me, and once again, I was hoping to just speed boost past, not get spotted, but no, I needed the smoke. And yes, by the way, this is exactly what's going to happen that you think is going to happen. So it's just the Ibuki now. I don't know why that ram did not need to happen. I mean, the Alsace just went for it because it was bonus damage. Sure, why not? Don't know about the Roma, though. Anyway, so last use of the Hydro, because we're obviously nearly at the end of this. And I'm basically just waiting for my torps to come back before I risk going around the island, because I don't have a lot of hit points. I mean, granted, the Ibuki doesn't either, but I don't know which way their guns are facing, and they've put torps out on one side, but, you know, they might drop torps out the other while I'm not paying attention, or, well, that's not that likely, though. They'd have to turn their ship all the way around. I'd probably notice that. Okay, torps, not such a threat, especially not while I've got my Hydro up. But one of the other survivors comes through, the Yugumo, and actually starts engaging with their guns. You don't that often see Japanese destroyers using their guns. Well, that has to come with the caveat these days of the non-gunboat Japanese destroyers, because of course some of them are actually now quite potent gunboats. But the Yugumo is not one of them, especially. So if this Ibuki hadn't been such low health from those couple of torp hits that I did manage to land, the Yugumo probably wouldn't have risked it. But as it is, well, they say in the chat, you know, their guns are facing the other way, and I was at this point just like, oh yeah, no, I can just go and shoot, can't I? And there we go, final kill. So that was a fairly typical mix for me, I guess, of a bit of luck, a bit of skill, and just a bit of derp as well, especially at the start. But it ended a lot better than it started, and for a completely stock ship, I've certainly had far worse performances, over 122k damage. And that Yugumo actually, unsurprisingly, came in second place. I think they did pretty well for themselves. The Roma was third, but of course a big chunk of that damage would have been from ramming the enemy Alsace at the end. Did I say it was a tier 10 game before? It wasn't, it was a tier 9 game. Well done, Brain. Wow, there was even derp in the commentary. There we go. So a big chunk of my damage was on the enemy Izumo, as you can see, but the rest was all reasonably well spread around. And, you know, if I'd had this game in a Japanese torpedo destroyer, I'd have been perfectly happy with that. In fact, I'd probably have had more damage more quickly, because the Japanese torps are just more effective. But overall, you know, given that that game with the 200% anniversary daily was more than enough XP to... it gave me, what was it, 20k plus XP? So I already had enough from the previous game's grinding to immediately then get like the upgraded hull and torpedoes, essentially. Yeah, I don't see the Z-23 being that tough a grind for me. But I need to learn how to aggressively contest caps better. Because that at the start, that was not it. That was definitely not it. I think the enemy Akizuki just ran away because I had Hydro and friends coming in behind me. If that was a one-on-one situation, I think that could have gone very differently. So hopefully you enjoyed this replay, and if you did, you can hit the like button. You can do all the other usual things down under the video. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more.